Hello, and welcome to the Practice Marketing Podcast, highlighting successful strategies from North America's fastest growing clinics and experts so you can learn from their wins and power your practice growth. Hi, I'm your host, Neil Trickett, CEO of Practice Promotions. And today's focus, we're going to talk about not being boring and building an unforgettable clinic brand. So I'm excited to have McKenna dance with us. She's our director of our patient engagement team here at Practice Promotions. And so she's really an invaluable member of our Practice Promotions team. She guides our clients in developing an awesome brand through lots of content to their patient list, right? And getting patients to come back for care as well as refer others. And so she has a master's degree in mass communication and media studies, and she's helped hundreds and hundreds of our clients grow their business and their brand. So McKenna, welcome. Great to have you on the podcast here.
Thank you. I'm so excited. I love talking about branding with our clients, so I'm excited to do it today too.
Yes, I'm looking forward to getting your expertise on this and sharing this with our audience. So let's get into this. So, there's a lot of confusion around branding out there. Like, what is it really? What do we mean by branding, especially when it comes to a practice?
Yeah, I mean, to put it simply, and I feel like that's the easiest way to do this for business owners. Branding is the process of creating your unique identity. So think about who you would be as a person, who you would want to be thought about in your community. That's your brand. Your marketing involves the tactics and actions and strategies that you use to promote your brand and promote your service and promote your product. So your brand is your personal, and your marketing is how you promote that person. So how you really get out into the community and make it well known about your why and what you do.
I love that. Yeah, and so to me, that branding part of it is really like that long-term consistency, like you said, who is this person of the practice, right? What is the what is it about you that makes you special, right? And I heard a long time ago from someone, I thought this was really funny, but branding is what people say about your company when you're not there.
100%.
Right.
100%. That
So
is
like,
what they
what do
say
we want
behind your
people to
back.
say about us behind our back? Right.
Yes.
Hopefully it's really positive, wonderful things, and that if you do good at branding, then that's what's going to happen. So I love how you put that out there. And so, we tend to focus a lot on marketing, right, for our clinics. And we like just what can I do to get new patients in the door right now? But why is the branding part of it so important?
Because if you don't focus on your brand, your marketing is going to have zero consistency. In the day and age that we're at, we're marketed to every second of every day, whether you realize it or you don't. The only way for your patients or your customers or whomever you're marketing to create that subconscious recognition is to have that strong brand identity so that when they do see your marketing, when they do see your advertising, they connect it back to your brand. They connect it back to that identity, and they connect it back to that relationship that they built with you. The brand is a very personal connection, and marketing is throwing your net out and seeing who you catch. So you really have to have that strong brand in ordering for your marketing to be successful.
That's absolutely spot on. I let's kind of we can talk a lot of like branding and marketing jargon, right? And sometimes it can feel a little confusing. But let's break this down to some examples, like things that we've seen with clients. So, I know that you've worked with clients that are high-end sports medicine. They're kind of like they've got that feel, that edgy kind of feel that they're going for, right? Things look very
Yeah.
sophisticated, cool. There's a lot of like, flashy athletic type photography
Yeah.
and right. And they might use like blacks or reds or different colors like that.
Yeah.
And then, if you're, let's say you're working with a, maybe more senior group, or you work a lot with kids, right? That might be very like with the pediatric clinics that we work with, right? They're fun, right?
Mhm.
There are lots of colors and bubbly and a very different kind of feel to those websites, both visually and in the content, right? We want to be speaking like it's kids. We're talking to parents, right? And
Absolutely.
you don't want it to come across cold. You want to have that kind of brand feel that's bubbly and warm and a great place to be as like a family. And then there's clinics where they want to be part of like the community in the town, and they bring a lot of like photography within the clinic of how they treat a lot of people in the town, or maybe they have
Yeah.
recognition from within the town, or maybe they treat like a lot of veterans, right? And they'll incorporate that into their branding. So you've probably seen a lot of that in terms of all the different styles and different parts of the country that we market for.
Well, you have to make your brand identity, relatable to what you are. So, for instance, if you are going to be treating vets, and that's such a serious audience, we have the utmost respect for our veterans, and, we really do want to provide them the most quality of care. Every patient deserves the most quality of care, of course, but specifically for our veterans, if you're looking at all the different clinics and you see maybe one that has curly fonts and, blues and reds and things like that, that's more for a child's clinic or a pediatrics clinic. You know what I mean? So you don't want to kind of cross the paths of, you know, a font for one particular clinic is not necessarily the font for you. So you
Right.
really want to make sure that your identity and your brand is very well identified so that the rest of it kind of falls into place naturally. Because like I said, subconscious recognition, you said a lot of the sports facilities, they do have the greens, the reds, the blacks, the blues, they really produce a lot of high functioning photography too that shows a lot of movement because that's what you want to be. You're idolizing who you want in that patient or the pain that you don't want anymore. So they really want to put that through in their marketing, in their brand identity, so that you think, I want to be that athletic. I don't want this ache or pain anymore. I want to be able to run like that, or I want to be able to lift like that. Or when it comes back to pediatrics, I want a safe space like that. And that's what your brand does for you. It creates that safe space for your patients to come in and feel connected right off of the bat and feel comfortable. So no, you hit the nail on the head. Each brand has to identify how their patients should recognize them and incorporate that into their brand because that is really the root cause of it all.
Yeah, and I think too, like, you got to know who you want to talk to. Like, who is your ideal customer, your ideal patient,
Yes.
and too often I think in clinics they say, hey, we treat everybody, right?
Yes.
So you got to narrow it down a little bit. Like, who do you see the most of, right? What type of folks that you see most in your clinic? And, it's one thing that, hey, I want to develop a sports medicine program, but if the majority of what you do is like 80% middle-aged people over with back and neck problems, then, you can create a sports program in your clinic, but that's not going to be the main focus of your brand, right? And the
Exactly.
other part too is that I think there's a lot of confusion out there when people think of a brand, they just think of a logo or sometimes the font, right, of what may be in their marketing. And
Yes.
that's not your brand, right? That's a little part of your brand in terms of, your imagery. But first off is really knowing like who you're going to be targeting, right? And then what you're all about, right? And what you can portray and all these kind of things. So I think that kind of leads us into our next section here, right? Let's talk about what can our audience do to start thinking about branding in a different way and take simple steps towards creating that unforgettable clinic brand.
Yeah, well, I mean, especially in medical clinics, creating that brand is really, really crucial to creating a trust with your patients. So that's one thing really to kind of solidify there. And, there's internal and external benefits to it. One, you want to have that connection with your patients, but you also want to be attracting the most talent that you can. And so your brand has to be strong for your internal talent too. They want to be at something that is steady, that is understood, and that has morals and values and projects it forward. So, your brand isn't just for your patients and for your audience. That is part of your target audience, but your target audience is also your employees and who you want to promote your brand, which is huge. You don't want anyone promoting your brand that doesn't believe in what you're promoting. So, yeah, your target audience is crucial. You need to identify that internal and external. And a lot of it too is because you have to create the trust with that target audience. That is your bread and butter. Those are, who you're going to gather feedback from, which is crucial for brand improvement as well.
Mhm.
So yes, your logo is one thing. That is strictly just one thing, your logo. There's many different parts to a brand, and the first part is identifying that target audience. Yes.
It's
Yeah.
so key, and I mean, if I think at like our best performing clients, the ones that look great, they've grown significantly, they have their branding dialed in. Like they emanate that from within the clinic, and they leverage us, they leverage their marketing to talk about that, right?
Yeah.
And they do really well with lots of photography and content and imagery and video and all that kind of stuff from within the clinic to show who they are. And I think you really talked something specific here, because it is a big struggle in healthcare today, in that there's a shortage of people. There's going to be a shortage of people for a long, long time. So you have to really strategize and change the way that you're branding and marketing your clinic, not only to the patients out there, but to bring in top talent and compete for top talent. And we've seen some clinics that have done, they put a lot of emphasis on this, right? And they've
Yeah.
really elevated their brand. They really elevated their marketing towards what you were just saying, which is to to show what it's like to work there, right? And be part of that family, and grow with that company. And that the better your brand is, the better your marketing is, the easier it is to attract top talent towards your practice. And
Absolutely.
and so, McKenna, what would you say is like that next? So we talked about target audience there, really defining that. What would you say is that next phase that people want to think about with their branding?
You have to determine your mission statement. That is crucial. That is your why. That is your clinic's primary purpose and goals. That is what is going to decide every decision for you at the root of it. You bring it back to that mission statement and you say, does that fall in line with what I want to promote for my brand? Does it come back to this, your why? So that helps you tailor your brand to resonate with those, who will benefit the most from your services. So really just making sure that your mission is out there and it guides your brand into the direction that inspires, again, not just your patients, because we want to inspire them to health and healthy living and pain-free living and things like that, but
Hmm.
also your team. When they're dealing with the nitty-gritty of the day, they need to keep the mission statement at their core with every decision that they make. So your mission statement is a huge one. You need to give that to all vendors that you work with. You need to make sure that anyone who comes in contact with your brand understands your mission statement and your why.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's all ties in with your purpose, right? And be able to show
Yeah.
that purpose. And here's a caveat with this, because we've all seen those mission statements that are like an entire paragraph, boring as
Yes.
anything. No one ever remembers what they're about. So do not go with that. Like, your mission ideally should boil down to like one sentence, right?
Yes.
So that people can like relate to it. So like for practice promotions, is we help practices succeed in improving more people's lives with clarity in their marketing results. Like, just super simple like that, right? So our team all knows that they can operate with it. It's what we portray out there in our branding. So you have to be able to refine it down. Take some time. It actually takes some work in those mission statements to refine that purpose down, but then it can really be embodied, right? It can really be embodied, and put out there. So yeah, we talked about audience. We talked about the clarity of your mission statement, so that can be portrayed out there. So what would you say is the next step there?
So after you identify your mission statement, that's your why. But again, as an identity, you still have to create qualities and values and morals that lead you to that why. And that's, I mean, just even as a person, you really have to identify what you resonate with and, what you believe in and the morals that you hold. So it's the exact same thing for your brand, for your baby, for your company. So, determine what sets your clinic apart. Highlight your unique qualities. And some of those could be, the specialized treatment plans that you have, or your state of the art facility, like some of the things that create the patient-centered approach that you provide in the clinic. Those are just a few various things that you can, highlight for some of those things. But clearly defining your core values will help you shape your clinic's culture and the way that you interact with your patients and building a very strong and distinct identity. Again, you're marketed to a million times, so you want that subconscious recognition and, the bridge kind of gapped back together between, what's your mission and then what are the morals and the qualities that you hold true to that. And if they're not matching, you probably need to go back to your mission.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things too, when you're mulling in qualities and values, don't say we provide quality care. Everybody provides quality
Yes.
care, right? Like what makes you unique, right? So
Yes.
like, hey, we focus on, 45-minute treatments, one-on-one, whatever it may be for you, or you have, um, licensed physical therapists with specialists in pelvic health, specialists in sports medicine, like whatever you might want to put there. But again, it comes down to what makes you the choice over someone else, right? And so
Yeah.
again, it takes some time to kind of think through these things and put them down on paper, and you got to kind of go through a few reiterations of it. But the more time you spend on that and the clearer that it becomes, it actually works not just from a branding and marketing perspective, but internally too, like you're saying, like that starts to shape your clinic's culture and really the way that your team interacts with patients, and everybody can have the same verbiage that they can explain. The patients then, in turn, they remember that verbiage. They spit that back out in, parties and stuff that they're at and mention that to friends. And then guess
Absolutely.
what? That's how you build that strong and distinct identity that you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and then all right, what'd you say is the next step there after our target audience and our mission statement and really looking at our qualities and values that we can portray?
I think that the next step is probably the easiest one and the one that most business owners probably think is the first step, which it's not. It's creating your visual assets. So this is where your logo comes into play. This is where your color scheme, your design style fonts, things like that, those are the visual assets that you put into your brand and then follow through into your marketing tactics that way. So we want all of your marketing to have a cohesive look. I know I said in the beginning, like we are marketed to so much. If you saw the Coca-Cola brand or, logo anywhere, you automatically know what that is. So that's what we want to do for your brand. We want patients to potentially see your logo in the community and then think back to you, or, see an image that is similar to one that you guys provide and maybe create that warm, fuzzy feeling that they get. So, if you don't have a specific guide, that's okay. We can help you kind of create consistency and identify some of these in your marketing tactics. That's kind of how we help some of our smaller businesses. But yeah, visual assets are a huge thing. Our designers are really wonderful about identifying some of those visual assets that maybe we could, heighten in some of your marketing tactics that you could bring back to your branding. So there's a lot within visual assets, but that's kind of the fun, creative portion of it.
Yeah. I would say too, like one thing I've seen, because we've had clients go through rebrandings, right?
Yeah.
They've leveled up basically, and so if you've been a clinic around for a long time, maybe you started out with brand colors, and you started out with a logo like your Uncle Bob put together, right?
Yep.
Who happens to be an on the side designer.
Yep.
Well, you grew your clinic, right? And now you're a little bit bigger and you got to be a little bit more professional. So, we've seen clients go through restyling of their logos to be a bit more modern, right? And refresh. And maybe they started out in something and they completely grew in a different area, right? They
Yeah.
became, more of a orthopedic, or they became more of a neurological clinic, or whatever it may be, that they need to modify that. So just because you create it one time doesn't mean you can't go back and change, right? And people go through rebrandings all the time. And one thing that we see a lot of in today's world is acquisitions, right? So if you're buying out other clinics, should you keep their logo and their brand, right? And do they have enough brand equity, as they call it, that you want to keep that going? Or just roll it into what your company is, right? So there's a lot of things to take into consideration with that, but you're so right. And just, the visual assets part of it, really has to tie in. And McKenna, do you have any examples of sort of like how imagery and colors and photos that people have taken in the clinic kind of tie in with their brand, right? And
No, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of like what you said. If you have a specialized clinic, let's say sports medicine, for instance, you have a sports medicine facility. A lot of the times they will have more of a hands-on approach to some of the physical activity. So, a lot of their imagery will be more of hands-on strength training or particular sport like baseball style or soccer style or things like that. So a lot of the times when those particular brands, Foundation Physiotherapy is one of our clients who has hit the nail on the head with a sports management brand with some of these things. They don't really have to think about it. Like as they're taking the visuals in the clinic, which we want photos from you guys, we want your marketing to be all custom photos from you guys. But a lot of the times it's thinking, what type of photo do you get? If you identify your brand and the visual marketing tactics that you want to put forward, you don't have to think about that. So, Foundation Physio, when they're going to do a strength training photo shoot or a running program photo shoot, they already know the photo shots that they're going to stick up because they have already done them in previous photo shoots. They like to use the same type of styles within their photos. So it creates that brand recognition. They always have their logo in the back, they always have the person dressed in similar colors. So it's things like that, the way you set up the image, maybe taking the image from the back of the PT. So the PT's face is not necessarily in it, it's all patient focused rather than PT focused. So there's particular things that you could really keep in mind when developing some of these assets that help you moving forward with your brand. That's just one example of them. Another example of them would be potentially pediatric clients. A lot of those are also hands-on approaches because, they're children, they're babies sometimes. So, of course, you're going to be a little bit more hands-on with that. But with those, no pain shots. We want to
right.
always show smiling. We want to show positive things. So, things like that are also things that you need to keep in mind when you're creating some of your visual assets for particular brands.
Do you want more freedom in your clinic? Then you need to work on your business, not just in it. The top practice owners know that they need a marketing system that consistently attracts patients from the internet. And at Practice Promotions, we've helped hundreds of practice owners skyrocket to the top of Google and get more new patients from online. Go to practicepromotions.net/kit to get our free practice marketing sample kit. It includes all our digital marketing tips and tricks that will get you new patients from Google. That's practicepromotions.net/kit, KIT, for a free marketing kit. And now back to the show.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's so crucial. And I'm thinking too, like we do have some clients that are a big focus on women's health, and and,
Yes,
and their brands are a lot more feminine type fonts and colors,
absolutely.
and then the photos are really, you're gonna definitely want to have like your female therapists, and there's like a collaboration type photography, right, where there's both smiling and it's like a guidance type thing. So just
You
like
are
you're saying, like
exactly
I
right.
think what's
Yes.
really cool is like once you know that what your audience is going to gravitate towards and what they're going to be comfortable um, with about your types of treatment or programs that you have, then it becomes easier to make those types of photography and videography in the clinic. And you're so right in that, like, if you're a sports medicine or something like that, you're going to want certain types of shots
Yeah.
that people are going to go, "Oh, that's exciting," or
Yeah.
and that you might not necessarily have like an ultrasound picture uh
Yeah.
in a sports med. You're going to have some athletes working hard in the gym, and coached. And we
Yeah.
have a client that they got a lot of NFL players and this kind of stuff. So boy, oh boy, did that create a lot of credibility when you can work with some professional level athletes and be able to portray them and brand them on your website and your marketing. And they really took off for those guys as they incorporated that. And then what's our final step here? So we've talked about finding the right audience, creating that mission and purpose, defining your unique qualities and values, creating those visual assets. And so what's our final step here that we want to leverage for improving our brand?
Yeah, so this is really finding your voice. So it's, what type of tone do you want to always be portraying to your audience? So, you're going to be communicating in many different ways to many different people. So you need to find a brand voice that communicates empathy, expertise, dedication to patient care. There are particular things that you need to always make sure are available in your tone and in your voice that you take in your marketing tactics.
Mhm.
And this consistent tone should be evident in all patient interactions, educational materials, online presence, your internal staff talking to patients. Really, that's your brand voice. So it's creating that trust and a strong and emotional connection to your patients while enforcing the values that you hold. So again, for pelvic health therapists, they are going to have that more feminine tone, that more, ease in approach for something so specific and so personal like pelvic health and things like that. So again, if you're going to have, a pelvic health, you don't want to have a very harsh tone. Those just won't really match together. So
Mhm.
yeah, finding your brand voice is a huge one.
Absolutely. And I can tell, I'm sure you can too, but you can tell when you had a physical therapist write the content,
Oh,
right?
yes.
Because it's so medical and like, about the treatment style and all that kind of stuff. So you got to like pull yourself out of writing from a PT perspective and write from your audience's perspective, right? So the headlines, those first sentences are key. The way that everybody reads, and especially when we're online, my gosh, when we're on a phone, when we're on a website, we skim, right? So you have to have your headlines are the biggest thing that you need to dial in. So your headlines, and then what you call your subheads, which are the smaller headlines that break up the paragraph. You want to have big spaces in between paragraphs, and what you say in that first sentence of each one of those subheaders is really critical to kind of hooking people in to wanting to read more. So that's where you have to spend the majority of your time really implementing that brand voice. And so when we talk about brand voice, it's not about you, it's about your patient, right? It's about what matters to them. And if you can blend that in as your brand voice, that's really going to help you accelerate your branding and your marketing.
And you hit the nail on the head with that. That's exactly what we focus on, especially on the patient engagement team, is engaging with the patient, talk to the patient, talk in the rooms of the patient.
Mhm.
That's really what we want to do, because some of the medical jargon is intimidating. We want it to be a comfortable interaction. We want them to feel comfortable, having that conversation with you. And medical jargon, yes, it's a little intimidating sometimes.
So we talked a little bit here about the strategy part of it, but let's talk about some things for implementation and techniques. And I'll kind of kick this off here because we'll talk about websites first, right? So like your website to me is your online storefront. It's gotta be the big part of your brand. It's right how you
Yep.
have 2 to 3 seconds of someone arriving to your site and they're going to judge you, right? So your website really has to, speak your brand in seconds to that person arriving at your website, and then give them the opportunity to start navigating around easily, right? And being mobile friendly, so that they can start to learn more about you, right? And
Yeah.
that the correlation is the more someone's going to learn about you, the higher the likelihood they're actually going to become a patient. And so it's all about stickiness on your website. So that consistency in your brand throughout your entire website, but especially the pages where people are going to come to. And what most people think is that, hey, it's just my homepage. Well, that is a big chunk of it, but if you actually have more than one location, it's your location pages on your website that actually become that main page where people will go to from Google My Business, local searches. So what I've seen often is that if you have more than one location, those other location pages end up being like a very small amount of content on there and basically the address and times that you're open. So you're missing out on all the people that arrive to that page who would, you got to have a lot of information on there that's very interesting, right? And that's going to start to hook them and want to, connect with you further. So I would say that's a big part of your brand is really your website, right? And the online storefront for your business. Now, McKenna, you're really diving into this, which is social media. So let's talk about branding and social media.
Well, and talk about an area where you can, have a personal, fun, and professional feel to it. I feel like, yes, your website is your baby, but your social media is where you can have a little bit of fun with some of your visual assets too. So, I mean, you definitely want to ensure you have a cohesive visual pattern with your social media account that aligns with your brand voice. You want your bio to be, in the tone that you have with your brand. And you want your captions and things to maintain consistency along those lines as well. But your social media is where you get to kind of have fun. You put some of those professional photos up there, but then you also do behind the scenes in the clinic. You can do Q&As with your patients, of course. Post pictures of your patients on there with testimonials if they approve. Things like that. Your socials where you get to kind of create that person or continue that personal connection with the patient outside of the clinic. So you want your social media to feel like they're in the clinic. So yeah, just creating that cohesive, bridge between the website to the social media is super important.
Yeah, and I think you really, um, brought up a great point there, and that social media is entertainment, right? It's
Yes.
fun. It's people are not on there to go learn about something in
They'll
depth
go to
and
your website
technical.
to
They'll go
learn
to your
that.
website for that,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, absolutely. So social media is really about having a great brand image, but not stuffy, right?
Yes.
You got to have some fun with it. You got to show that you're humans, right? And a big thing on social is people love stories, right? So however what you just said, like wherever you can really kick in a well-branded patient success stories, that's a great platform for that. Of course, just make sure that you always have, visual and written consent for that. But yeah, it's a great thing that you can be really portraying on social there.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about like Google Ads here real quick. So Google Ads is a way of us advertising on Google for people that are actually searching for for a solution out there. So that's why Google Ads are so important. And really, it's the top of Google. It's what, Google commands as the top of Google. It's pay to play. But Google Ads is a critical part of how people will find your clinic and where you can move them into different parts of your website for that. So the key thing with Google Ads is, again, tying in with what we've been talking about with branding, and that is what's those captivating headlines that tie into your services, right? Your mission, your brand, and then especially the description part. That's going to be very helpful in showing what you do to get the results with patients, right? And again, it's not like you might want to portray certain programs that you might have, but really the outcomes people would expect to receive. And anytime you can talk to, getting people back to health or out of pain, there are some, rules and stuff you have to watch out for with, talking about pain on there. But anytime you can really show that you're talking to the patient about their particular problem and that you had a lot of success helping that, that's what's going to get people to click on your ads and move them forward into your website. So that's a little bit about using branding with Google Ads. And then how about we talked about social here, but how about like email marketing, McKenna?
Yeah, email, it kind of ties a little bit in with Google Ads too. The subject lines are huge. That first header right there is a big thing, especially with email marketing. And of course, with emails, we want to create consistent branding too. We know email marketing is very oversaturated in today's market. So if anything, especially in emails, that branding, that consistency, that same time of month is really, really important to patients, just to make sure that they're identifying that outreach and they're really encouraged to engage with it with the clear calls to action. But with email marketing too, the big thing with that is we always want to drive them back to your website, which is your baby, your star child. So email is huge for consistent outreach and always making sure you're getting in that inbox, because if you're not getting in that inbox, somebody else is. I can guarantee
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. And when it comes to emails, we got basically kind of two buckets here. One is the communication style of emails, right? That would come from your clinic. Maybe it's appointment notifications or a follow-up from your therapist or something along, even though those can be automated, right? It still is more of that kind of informational, sorry, not as much informational, but more like action type
Hmm.
emails, right? So there, just make sure you want to have really good signature lines. Like that's a great place for you to put a little bit of branding in so it looks professional. Is some of the HTML signature lines that you could put in there, like obviously company logos and stuff like that, or even in the header. You could have the company logo and the branding part of it, tagline that's up there, things like that, just to make it a little bit more branded, right? And then we've got
Absolutely.
our like true marketing type emails, which are going to be a lot more visual, a lot more HTML in there, and those are going to be informational. So like your blog that may go out from your website tied in through email marketing. If you have specific campaigns tied in through your email marketing, like that's where you're going to use a lot more of the imagery and the colors and the fonts and the right kind of headers and things like that tied in with your email marketing. So,
Yes.
and then McKenna, this is an area that you've specialized in a lot over the years here, but in the clinic, there's a lot of, we've gone digital a lot, but there's still a lot of print materials that we need, right? We need different brochures on different programs. We need posters up on the wall to remind people of all these different programs that we have. We use direct mail and postcards to let people know about events and things that we've got going on. So, we got to talk about print marketing, direct mail marketing. How do we use branding with that?
Yeah, I mean, you personalize each piece to show the recipients that you understand them. This is an area where you can have fun with the visuals and the fonts and, the colors and things like that. Obviously, we want to include clear calls to action so that they follow through with some of those things. But when it comes to print marketing, that is specifically where we want to make sure that each piece, whether it be that brochure, that poster, that direct mail outreach, it all has the same consistent feel. So when they are in the clinic and they pick up that brochure, and then 2 months later, when you reach out with that direct mail piece, they remember and they reach out to you guys and they connect that piece to you guys from that relationship that they had built with you previously. So we really want them, especially with the oversaturation in the email market that are in right now. If you need that extra boost, that's really where print marketing comes in, and your branding is 10 out of 10 most of the time on those, because I mean, when you pull it out of your mailbox, that's what you're holding. Or when you pull it out of your purse, specifically for me, after I get out of into the car for my doctor's appointment and I pull out the brochure and I start reading it, in my car, because that's what someone does. They wait until they're in that personal, private area, and then they pull that back out and they try to read a little bit or educate themselves on that even more. So, I mean, your print marketing piece, whether it's a direct mail piece or something you send a patient home with, it's important to have the visual connection on that,
Mhm.
because it is going to be something that connects them back to your brand and back to your voice and back to, whatever you're trying to get them back into the clinic for.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's a really critical part of your overall marketing and branding out there. And there's so many neurological studies that have been done that show there's just a different type of neurological processing when you're seeing something on a screen versus when you're tangibly holding it in your hands. And so, that's why you still get a lot of mail in your mailbox from catalog companies and, LLB and all these type of different companies. They're spending millions and millions and millions of dollars on direct mail marketing and print marketing because it works, right? And our most successful clients really have commanded very well the digital aspect of things, the digital advertising, all that kind of stuff. And they also really leverage print marketing for that different approach. And you have this whole connected branding that people experience, both new patients and your current patient list for patient reactivations and referrals. You have this completely tied in branding, right, from all of that. And we do approach branding consistently, but also a little bit differently in print and direct mail marketing because of that different experience, right? And how things
Yeah.
are laid out and visually, and there's something too about like colors will pop differently on material versus what you see on the screen, right? And so we don't tend to
Oh, yeah.
necessarily notice the colors as much on the screen as we would in a piece in our hands, right? So it's really fun. You can play with the colors a lot more and the visual aspects a lot more in the print marketing. So we're kind of wrapping up here, but I'd love to get from you, like, what have you seen as you've worked with lots and lots of clients here when they have a strong brand?
Well, so when you have a strong brand, you more easily connect to your patients. You just have an easier time getting them back into you. You have an easier time maintaining that trust. You have an easier time getting them to work for you with that word of mouth approach. When you have a strong brand, even look at what we just went through with COVID in a time of crisis or change, such as a pandemic, different policy shifts. I mean, we're about to come into an election year and things like that. A strong brand can maintain the patient trust and loyalty and just provide stability and reassurance, not only to your patient, but to you as the business owner. That's why it should be important to you as a business owner too, to create that strong brand. So I would say creating that strong brand should be company policy number one. When you're starting to put your heads together and say, what do I want this to be? That brand has to be identified as step number one, and everything else will follow through so much easier.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. And like we've talked about here, I just see those clients that really put a lot of effort into their branding and the way that that comes across. They're just so much more successful, right?
Yeah,
Because it just, like you said, there's a lot of stuff that just starts to happen because you've put a lot of effort and attention into that part of it, right? Because then your marketing becomes much more effective. People know at some point, every business really needs to get into word of mouth,
absolutely.
in a word of mouth situation. And the more that happens, again, the easier a lot of opportunities just keep coming your way. But that comes again back to the branding part of it, where if that's really consistent, the word of mouth follows that, right? So if you're getting great results in the clinic because you've got a great operating team, and then you have a good brand and marketing, those two go hand in hand, right? And then you can be, super successful moving forward. Um, so McKenna, any final advice here for our listeners as they're thinking about, what can I start tackling here from a branding perspective?
If you need help, reach out. We work with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clinics. We work with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of brands. So we are here to help. We have a team of wonderful graphic designers who will help you create those visual assets. We have a team of wonderful account managers who will help you create that tone and resonate with your patients. So if you're having difficulty really with some of those key factors for your marketing, reach out to us. Let us know how we can, help you with some of those areas, especially when it comes to some of the outreach that you're doing. We want to make sure that we're doing it as strong as possible. So if we can refine something in your brand, we are here to help. So that's just number one is, lean on us when we are there for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for that, McKenna. You and the patient engagement team do an amazing job of making our clients look fantastic and getting results as they reach out into the community and leverage all these different branding and marketing assets to do that. So thank you so much for all your hard work there, and thank you for sharing your expertise with us today in email and social and direct mail and print marketing, all kinds of great stuff that you handle there for our clients. So thanks for being on the podcast with us, McKenna. And to
Thank
all our
you.
listeners out there, thank you so much for listening. And make sure that you subscribe and follow us on our podcast and our different channels like YouTube and everything out there. We're here to provide great educational and informative marketing for you. And then, yeah, I'm just here wishing you much success in your practice.
Thank you for listening to the Practice Marketing Podcast. Don't forget to get your free practice marketing sample kit at practicepromotions.net/kit Start 2024 off the right way by building marketing systems that automatically attract new patients from online. That's practicepromotions.net/kit.